We have a renewable energy target, which is actually a scheme to force Australians to use more green power, at least 20% of all electricity supplies, even though it's usually far more expensive. Now that's why you see so many of those ugly wind farms springing up and spoiling some of our most beautiful scenery. It's because you effectively pay subsidies to the companies operating those wind farms and the solar schemes that they're there. But the Abbott government asked businessman Dick Warburton to see whether this target actually worked and whether it was worth the money. Dick Warburton handed down his report on Friday and joins me now. Thanks for your time.
Pleasure, Andrew.
Now, I want to go back to the very basics because either I'm mad or we're looking at one of the greatest frauds in our lifetime. The renewable energy target's primary aim is to stop or slow global warming. Is that true?
That's one of the aims. It's also to reduce emissions into the atmosphere.
But to reduce emissions in order to stop global warming. Now, how much difference to the world's temperature does this renewable energy target then make?
Well, we didn't get into that in our report at all, Andrew. We say it's a small addition to the emissions that have come out, or the emissions have been reduced, but there's not a lot of difference in the global warming at all.
But that's the whole point of this scheme, isn't it? I mean, if we're going to be spending billions of dollars, we should actually know whether that's making any difference at all to the world's temperature. But you didn't get into that.
No, we looked at the appropriateness of the scheme as it applied to the legislation that was increased in 2010. And you might have noticed then, Andrew, that the Labor government brought in the 2020 rule, 20% renewables by 2020. But that was based on a demand that has been nowhere near met, and in fact is going to be significantly lower than expected. And so therefore, we are going to be spending a great amount of money to push more electricity into an already oversupplied market. And that is just a market distortion that we don't need.
Right, so we're spending all this money to make more green power to stop a global warming. You're saying it wouldn't make much difference. How much have we actually paid then to make not much difference to the world's temperature through the renewable energy target? How much has that cost us?
Well, already the cross subsidies into the energy retail area has been $9 billion so far. But if we continued with the current process, it would cost us a further $22 billion.
And how much has the temperature of the world's atmosphere actually risen over the last, I don't know, 16 years?
Well, as I read the facts that are coming through, the temperatures have not risen since 1998. There's been just a flat area, even though carbon emissions have gone up, but the temperature has not, which is quite against what the modelling says.
Dick, I'm just staggered here. So tell me where I'm going wrong. Temperatures have not risen much. We've spent $9 billion on a scheme that will make about zero difference anyway. What the hell are we doing this for?
Well, the suspicion was that the temperatures would rise, but they haven't done so. The same as the effect was that the electricity demand would rise, but it hasn't done so. So the models back in 2010 or even earlier on the temperature things are proving at this stage to be wrong. And what we're attempting to do is to bring it back into proper perspective again.
But shouldn't you, when you're looking at this colossal madness of us spending $9 billion so far, heaven knows how much in the future, to make no difference to a problem that hasn't actually manifested, shouldn't your report say, this is crazy, end it now?
Well, I don't say that it's crazy in the report. I keep the words down to a more basic level, but we do say that it is a time for a change. It's quite a why spend this amount of money to pump more electricity into a market that's already well and truly oversupplied. So we just say it should be ended now. Now, we have taken into account the fact that there have been some certificates issued, and we've held back and suggested that we should let those at least begin, let those continue, but no further certificates issued going forward. In other words, cease the scheme. We did get an option to the government to perhaps, if the demand does increase, then you could perhaps increase the renewables by 50% of that demand. But that's the section option that we put up.
So if the government takes your recommendations on board, with luck, we will see no more wind farms despoiling the countryside.
If they take the first option, that's correct.
Thank heavens for that, Dick. You might have saved some of our most beautiful spots. Now, you've been attacked by the green energy lobby and by the likes of John Hewson and the ABC as just a climate denier with vested interests, a former oil executive, big oil. Do you have vested interests, or do your critics have the vested interest?
Andrew, I have no vested interest at all in this. I just like to study the facts, and the facts at this stage are speaking for themselves. And so this wasn't actually a part of our report per se, but it's certainly something that I'm well known in my thoughts about.
But the vested interests of your critics, I mean, that's almost never stated in, say, ABC reports or such and such. How do you typify the kind of critics that are attacking you?
Well, I just have to let it go over my head, Andrew, because otherwise I get thrown names by people that I've never met before who seem to believe they know exactly what I have in my mind, and it's pretty annoying. But look, you've just got to live with that, I guess.
Someone like John Hewson, I really think every time he steps up in front of a camera on this sort of issue, they should say that he represents a group that has an interest too in green energy schemes, but that never happens. Now, Dick, what will happen?
Well, I think they should say that, because they keep, every time they put my name in the press, they say well-known climate. Well, they either use sceptic or denier. I'd rather they say, look, well-known South Sydney Swans football player, Dick Warburton. That'd suit me a lot better.
Yes, I'd like to be known as a well-known Richmond supporter after last night, but never mind. Dick, what will happen to our electricity prices if the renewable energy target is not modified?
The electricity prices will continue to rise. The RET has increased electricity prices by 3 to 4%, which is not a huge percentage, but it depends where you're coming from, whether you think that's a large amount or not. But the thing that's distorted the whole market is the fact that so much supply has come into the market that the supply well exceeds the demand, and the old law of supply and demand comes into effect, and in actual fact prices have come down because of that. But that's a market distortion that will eventually change in time and get back to being much higher cost if we continue the RET.
Dick Warburton, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Andrew.